So as Ishmael said, I've been doing SIEM for a while, and I was brought on to install SIEM, pick a SIEM, install a SIEM, manage the SIEM. So I started out with ArcSight, I moved to Splunk. I'm working on ELK now. So I've been in this space for a while, and I've been doing security for a number of years. So and so 15 years doing InfoSec. Mostly in the DoD government space. I got some letters after my name, and I usually have more projects than I have time to do them. I came out here and I thought of 2 more projects, and I'm like, oh crap. So hey, we've been doing SIEM. You guys came here. It's a SIEM summit, so you're bringing in logs from all over the place, right? You're monitoring all sorts of stuff. You're trying to figure out how to add context, add information. You're trying to figure out how to better identify what you need to actually focus on, what alerts are important, and of those alerts, is it a false positive or not? Is this something that I really should have my hair on fire on? And other people, Doug and Seth, have talked about ways to add context, but you know what? You have context right in your own neighborhood. AD has a ton of information, I realized, that I wasn't using. To add context to the alerts, to my searches, and to the information I had. And I said, well, hey, what kind of low-hanging fruit that can I get out of AD that can add context to the things I'm seeing? So, so I started doing that. I said, hey, so I figured out, some of these things. And so I'm going to talk about them, and I'm going to talk about them about 4 parts. What the information is, how I'm getting it, where I'm using it. I'm going to talk about why that information or those alerts or that data is important. I'm going to provide either suggestions or solutions. If it's an issue, I'm going to provide suggestions and solutions to figure out how to deal with that. And I'm also going to talk a little bit of the level of effort, because just because the data is there doesn't mean it's easy to collect and then add to your SIEM or add to context. So I have to tell you, this is usually I just have slides with data on it. So this time someone said, hey, you should have a demo. I said, all right, that sounds good. So I started building a demo. After building 6 VMs and several scripts, I said, maybe I should record the demo. So we recorded the demo, but this is the first time I have to admit I've ever had recordings in my slides. So we'll see how this works, and hopefully it's not completely horrible. All right. So the first thing I decided to do was really monitor what I call any active, inactive accounts. These are accounts that either should have no activity or have been expressly disabled, or the person has left and therefore the account's been deleted. How many people actually delete your accounts when people leave? If you raise your hand, you're probably maybe mostly lying. Or you haven't talked to your admins lately. So these are the commands I use. I use a lot of WMI, PowerShell to get these commands. You don't always have to take pictures. These slides are going to be up. I'm going to have them on my website as well. Talking about, so you don't have to take these pictures because the commands are long. So you want to monitor these deleted accounts. So here's how it works theoretically. So you run the command, right? From an admin prompt, dumps it to CSV, and then I just have a simple PSC script to do SCP up to my Splunk server. Once there, then you're monitoring. Your user comes in, tries to log on, types his username, types his password, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Oh. His account's been disabled, but you're monitoring that. So you come over to your Splunk, you run a command, or you run a search command where you've uploaded that information to a lookup table, and you're running that lookup table every few minutes. And so that lookup table should always be blank, except when someone has actually decided they want to try and log into a disabled account. So the minute that that something pops up on that screen, you go say, what the heck's going on? So why is this important? Well, users will use already created accounts to hide their activity. If account has access to their target already, then they don't need to actually do any privilege escalation, which if you may be monitoring for, but you may not be monitoring for the account that, hey, I already have access to the database, I don't need to do privilege escalation. Obviously, the best solution is delete the accounts as soon as they're not needed. We actually have a situation where we have a lot of workers that are only there part-time. So they show up, they're gone for 6 months, and then they come back. Those accounts aren't deleted, they're just put into a disabled account status. And a disabled account, they're disabled and moved into a disabled OU. This makes it really easy for me to dump that OU to a list and upload it to my server and then monitor that list. So 99 times out of 100, anytime I get an alert on this, it's because someone came back from their TDY or their leave or whatever, and we weren't notified so we could remove them from the alert list. So generally, the level of effort for this is fairly minimal. It's a 3-step procedure. Done. So then we have like a kind of a twofer. So you have accounts with passwords that are set to never expire. These are generally, you don't want these, and you have also accounts that have been created but never been accessed. 2 separate commands that determine this. And so this works very similar to the previous alert, just the commands are slightly different. Again, running just a simple PowerShell script from your elevated command prompt, dumping it to a CSV, uploading that CSV to your server. In this case, like I said, I'm using Splunk. Sorry, Justin. So, but this time, when the user is able to log on, it's just because the password, just got the password from 4 years ago. And so now it just shows up as, hey, this account is active. So you may not always, this search may not always be blank, but maybe you're looking for patterns on there. How many times it's been accessed, when it's accessed, the servers that it's accessing. And so that may be a little bit different. And in the same sense, the accounts that have never been accessed, I'll talk about a little bit while it's running through, but I mean, this is a little bit of a rinse and repeat, just using a different thing. But accounts that have never been accessed, this happens sometimes when you get an account, you get a user that's supposed to be there, or maybe you get HR says, hey, this user's showing up on Monday. You create the account, but for whatever reason, the user didn't show up. And so now you have this account that was created, but no one's using, and it's kind of forgotten about. Or this has happened a lot in organizations I've worked at, where the ops is testing something. They create several accounts to test this application, and then they forget those accounts are there, and so you have accounts that just haven't been accessed laying around. And so, again, accounts with non-expiring passwords, they're ripe for brute force attacks. Unused accounts tend to be forgotten about, so they're just sort of laying there waiting for someone to find them and be used. And so both of these can be used as entry points into and around your network. Don't give accounts, or try not to give accounts with a non-expiring password. Use Lapse, which is the Microsoft tool to rotate passwords. There's other expensive tools that will try and do that for you for a lot more money. You want to monitor these things like a hawk. You want to, and definitely, again, if the account's not being used, or for whatever reason that user isn't coming back, then or doesn't show up on time, then you disable or delete those accounts until they actually get there. Again, level of effort is fairly minimal. Now, collecting local accounts. So sometimes what attackers will do is they'll grab a local account and get onto your machine with a local account. These are a little harder to manage because those accounts aren't centrally, there's no central management in most sense of those. There's no central way to grab these. So, so what I generally do is I will run some kind of script that will grab them remotely, but run that script at night when no one's around, because now you're going to hit pretty much every machine in your enterprise. If you have a large enterprise, this is a little challenging. You don't want to drive up that network traffic, but this is a great way to do this. If you run this at night, it can that can definitely help. So in this case, I have a batch file that runs the WMI script you saw on the previous screen. It runs it against a text file that has a list of machines in my enterprise. I can generate that text file either manually or with another WMI script that just goes into AD, grabs all the machines that I want to monitor, whether it's from just a single OU or across my AD, across my forest, puts it on that list. Now, if someone actually tries to use that local account, sorry, let me back up. So the script then dumps all the local accounts from each machine into a text file. We upload that text file to my SIEM, and now if one of those local accounts is used to try and log on, where then it actually is trying to authenticate to the domain, now I'm actually able to monitor that. If I'm collecting local workstation logs, I can also monitor against those workstation logs when that local account is used on those workstations. And so now, as you can see, I have a couple of ways to actually check and show that, hey, look, this local account tried to log on to this workstation at this time. And so I can start investigating that. Is that local account supposed to be doing that? I just used, obviously, IE user, which is a default local account that shows up a lot of times because I got a little lazy in actually creating a local account. But I think you get the picture. Just a quick note, obviously changing the terms in your search gives you different, so you can either, the alert can show you the host name or the IP address. So malware often uses English is not an engineer's first language. Malware can use local accounts to propagate or maintain persistence. You can alert on new local accounts that show up by running this, comparing it to a diff of your previous. And you can alert on these accounts when they try to access domain resources. So users obviously shouldn't be able to create local accounts. Your list of local accounts should be short. You really shouldn't have local accounts on your workstations except for what Windows uses at a minimum. So you get to investigate new accounts. You get to investigate local accounts that are trying to access network resources. Level of effort on this is medium because you actually have to run this script across, where you're accessing everything across your enterprise. Last reboot time. This is kind of interesting. It's not necessarily always something that you're doing for security to determine last reboot time. Are there security applications? Absolutely. But there are a lot more operational applications. And not only that, many of these things, I have a note here to say, hey, many of these things what I'm showing you is not the only way you can do it. Definitely when I was doing research on, collecting the last reboot time, I had 500 hits with 500 different methods. This is just how I chose. There is actually a fairly interesting Microsoft, either a TechNet article or a Microsoft blog article on using event 6005 to determine percent uptime. So at any rate, again, I'm using just your machine, your machine.txt. I have a quick script using that WMI command that does last reboot time, runs that, it upload, then running a separate upload where I upload that list to the SIEM server, and so it's really just gives you a table of it. And so this might be just a report that goes to ops, or it could be just something that you keep up, or you keep in a location for when people need to look at this report. But either way, it is a fairly simple, a fairly just static thing that you can use for reference. So a lot of times I like to use this to verify that patches that needed a reboot have been actually installed, because machines that don't get rebooted, that patch never installs, and so that's something to be aware of. It can help catch unexpected reboots. Well, wait a minute, so domain controller 01 isn't supposed to reboot at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. What's going on there? That may be an event taken in correlation with other events that may warrant a little bit of investigation. You can use your SIEM to track, to report on this, track history of it. And the level of effort in this can be minimum to medium, depending on how many servers, how many machines you want to monitor for last reboot time. This is something I've been using quite a bit. Users who are always logged on. Someone was saying, hey, users, I remember it might have been at a SOC summit. Someone's like, hey, watch for users that log on at interesting times during the night. If there's a 2 a.m. log on, you want to check that. I'm like, all right, I got that. I can write that search in a heartbeat. Boom. 45 users logged on at 2 a.m. What the hell? No, they're just always logged on. I go over, why don't you should log off, you're not getting patches. Oh, well, if I log off and ops does something, I can't log on, then I can't do work. So I just stay logged on. Oh, crap. So, well, you know what? Then guess who calls the help desk when suddenly their machine takes 2 hours to reboot and patch? Well, that's them. Or maybe they'll call the help desk and say, hey, my mouse stopped working. Well, what's going on with the computer? Did that latest patch go? No, it didn't. So there you go. So at any rate, so I wrote a script that mostly I started giving the help desk because they were having to run this, have this problem all the time where a user's problem was directly related to the fact that they hadn't restarted their machine in 6 months or 8 months or a year. And so this would basically just say, hey, look, this user on this machine was logged on for this many days. Now the days are all 0 because they're VMs, and I was running this, within 2 minutes of starting all the VMs. But normally, that days logged on column on the right, it would show like 10 days or 45 days or 90 days. I mean, 100 days. So that's what I had, So. So why is this important? Well, in general, it's really more for troubleshooting than security. Help desk, you can use this. I definitely know mine. Help used it a lot for before escalating issues because this really resolved a lot of their issues. And, occasionally an attacker, if they're really kind of lazy or stupid, can get caught this way. It's like, hey, look, badguy.com has been logged in for 240 days. So, but I don't see a way that this would really be caught, but it's kind of neat, and it helps the help desk out, and you get to go yell at people to say log out. That's a pet peeve of mine. Sorry. So anyway, force reboots if you can, once a week, Sunday night, whatever. Fairly level of effort's fairly minimum. I run this script overnight again because just to minimize impact on the enterprise network. So service account activity. So this was interesting because talked about this earlier. Was it Doug? Was it you? Or who was talking about monitoring service accounts? Or was it Seth? And this is something I was really, I'd been struggling with trying to figure this out because, most of the time when you're talking about monitoring service accounts and the weird activity, people are like, oh, you got to use UBA, and you go, okay, great, how much is UBA? Oh, yeah, we're not doing that. So, but there are a couple things that you can do, but you got to do some upfront prep. You got to split your service accounts into 3 different groups. The first group is accounts that are used to do some kind of scanning. And if they're, so Nessus or, pick your scanner du jour, Retina or whatever, those accounts are going to have few source hosts while they're going to have many destination hosts. So you got to, so figure that out. Okay, this service account is only should be coming from these hosts. Then accounts used for applications that phone home. Well, they're going to have many destination accounts, but many source hosts, but few destination hosts. So they're always going to be calling back to maybe 1 or 2 servers. So that's the second group. And then the third one is sort of just accounts that don't fall into 1 or 2, so they're just logging in all over the place. They're logging in from here to here to here to here to here to here. And there are a few applications and service accounts that you're going to have like that. By the way, because what's going on, a service account doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I installed application Nessus and I have a service account for Nessus. Ops uses service accounts for like anything that, maybe they have a PowerShell script and they're like, that PowerShell script needs to run all over the place, and so I give it a service account because I'm not going to tie it to my user account. Well, that thing is a service account. And you're like, well, it's not an app. Yeah, but it's a service account because you want to lob it, you want to put it into that kind of group. So now I have to say that figuring this out and how to demo this turned out to be a lot harder than I thought. This is a pain in the butt. In general, I think I got at least either one or two down. In this case, I think I've demoed that, where you have a scanning application where it should only come from one or two hosts. And so it works like that, it works well that way. But I'm going to have to say that my example for the second one isn't as good as I'd like it to be. And if anyone has better ways of doing it, I am all open for that. So in general, I'm just saying, hey, this service account should only come from this host. And so I'm just monitoring event 20, just the logon event of 4624. And so I was just running a simple PowerShell script that was just going out and connecting, and then I ran a second PowerShell script that connected somewhere else. And as you can see, the minute I was doing that, it's just doing a real-time search, and it just says, and so the minute the new PowerShell script ran that connected from a different host, I immediately got a second machine, and you say, hey, well, wait a minute, that account shouldn't be coming from that machine. Let me figure out what's going on. And in the same methodology, you should be monitoring, the other way around where you have something calling home. It should only be calling home to these machines, and the minute it calls home, or the minute you see that logging onto a different machine for whatever reason, then you should go investigate. This is a little challenging. But it's important to figure this out because why? Service accounts often have uber permissions. They sometimes have more permissions than most of your admins. They're just all over the place. They tend to be fire and forget accounts. Hey, I need this application installed. It needs a service account. Give it a service account. Give it godlike permissions, and it works. Great, I'm done. I don't think about that thing again. The passwords tend not to be changed. Why? Because you've put that password in like a bazillion spots to get it to work, and you don't want to change all those spots again. So you got to monitor this thing. You got to figure out how to monitor it. So ID when and where and how each account is used. If possible, block it everywhere else. This is tedious and this is challenging, but that's what you got to do. You could purchase a tool that changes the password everywhere on a regular basis, but again, as I mentioned before, these tools are expensive and they sometimes don't work as well as advertised. Shocking, I know. Level of effort on this is major. Who owns each account? How many you can actually say list all your service accounts? First of all, can you even find all of them because they may not be named according to the convention that they should have been named. And then you can say, well, what's this service account do? I don't know. Who owns it? I don't know. How long has it been there? I don't know. All right, let's delete it. Whoa, we just broke the whole enterprise. So tools are expensive. They're hard to install. They're hard to configure. It's hard to maintain. Lots of tweaking to get this to work with high fidelity. So this is not a simple solution. It's not going to take you a week to get in place. Last one, I don't really have a video, but so tracking a specific patch. This is nice for like, hey, so-and-so, such and such virus is running around all the place. Do we have that patch installed? I can run this real fast across the network. I mean, there are other tools to do this. I just thought this was a cool command. I think this is one that came up on Ed Scotus and Paul Astodorian's blog for specific patches, for specific command line defense things. It was cool. Anyway, spot check for vulnerability in of the enterprise specific attacks or specific logs, KBs that are installed or not. Fairly medium, but again, mostly because you're having to go across the whole enterprise to run this. It's not a single machine. If you have a large enterprise, this could take a little bit. By the way, that fast fail switch, that's really nice. That speeds up your WMI scripts a lot. Anyway, so the conclusion I have is, hey, look, don't simply settle for just ingesting logs. or pulling, you know, threat intel and other things from, you know, outside. You have AD, you know what your groups are in AD that to use and pull information out of to enhance and contextualize what you see, what you monitor, why you monitor it. And so really continue to use what other information from WMI, from AD, that can be compared to network and account activity. So my scripts and slides will be posted, both especially like the slides that are going to be posted from SANS aren't going to have the videos. I'll make sure that the one I upload has the videos, as well as the full scripts and everything. So